Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Job Picks. The other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC 286. We're back in London, but first we're going to recap a little bit of UFC Las Vegas, Petr Yan versus Merab Dvalishvili, because we did not get a chance to do that in a separate video. First of all, decent on the premium plays. On my half, I had a couple big underdog plays, and we hit back-to-back NHA plays. So those plays are 4 props. So last week we hit one for 11x, so that's plus 1100 play. And then this week we hit another one, 11x, so 2 in a row. So think about that. You put $10 down on both of those, get, was it over $200? You're almost getting a full year of the premium monthly membership just off of those 2 plays alone. Along with that, we hit plus 400 play on Jonathan Martinez by decision. That one was a bit of a sweat. Got the decision to go our way, so I was happy about that. Got the Volkov by KO. I had originally thought, if Romanov can, or if he can survive against Romanov in that first round and then live bet it after that, part of me thought, maybe Volkov just goes out there and knocks him out in the first round. So I put a little bit on Volkov by KO at plus 350. Turns out that I was correct. So those are a couple of the plays that hit from last week, and obviously a few more. We won't need to go over that though. Want to keep this somewhat short because we got 15 fights to break down on UFC 286. But we'll talk a little bit about the main event from last week. Petr Yan losing a decision 50-45 to Merab Dvalishvili, just an absolute beatdown. I will be honest, I was on Petr Yan in that one, but I got it at minus 175. So the closing line value on that was superb because I think it closed around minus 260, minus 265. So a lot of line value on there, but just because you get the line value doesn't mean you're going to cash your ticket. But that's what we look for when we make our bets. Ultimately lost that bet. Still stayed in the green, though, so I wasn't too bummed out about it because that actually cashed the 11x play on NHA, the under on Petr Yan's significant strikes. But what do you think about that main event?
Man, I don't know. It's like a main event you watch, and then thinking back, it's like, how did I not see that coming? I mean, Merab just proved that it's going to be a lot, and it's going to take a lot to beat a guy like him. I mean, attempting what? Was it over 50 takedown attempts?
49.
49.
49. Wasn't quite.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to attempt over 20 and still have a gas tank in a 5-round fight is impressive enough. I mean, he landed 11 of them landed, 135 significant strikes. Is that right?
Yeah, it was like a 140 something. It was up
dude,
there.
Those numbers, I just think of the 140 significant strikes and then add in 50 takedown attempts. I mean, that's crazy that a human being can do that because most can't.
He looked like he'd go 5 more rounds.
And he's the first guy to ever break Petr Yan. I mean, Petr Yan had no answer for anything. I mean, even early in the fight with Merab's leg kicks, that really did Petr Yan in my opinion. He took away the explosion. And from there, Yan was doing the best he could, man. But Merab he kind of proved that he's got a little power and he can crack you on the feet too. So you worry about that takedown long enough, he's going to find the chin. And if you start trying to strike with him and land your big power shots, he's just going to duck right under and take you down. I saw a lot of people saying that Umar Nurmagomedov is going to be the one that come in and beat Merab. And honestly, I don't see it at all right now. Yeah. I don't even know how people can even think about that with the competition Umar's fought. But, man, it's going to take somebody really, really good to beat Merab. I think the only good matchup right now for him would obviously be Aljo, which is sounding like that's never going to happen. Or Henry Cejudo, if Henry Cejudo comes back and looks like he's been training and is still on top of his game. So Merab right now, if it weren't for Aljo, and he might be better than Aljo, we'll never know because they're not going to fight. But outside of Aljo, man, Merab's the best bantamweight in the world.
Yeah, man, I just don't see how anybody can combat that kind of style. Like, that's just superhuman, like, energy, superhuman stamina. Like, just think about how do you stop that? The only way you stop that is to, like, hold him in place so that he can't keep moving forward.
Right.
But who the hell is going to do that? Like, nobody can do that for 5 rounds. You know what I'm saying? Like, you would say, Umar because he can wrestle, or Cejudo because he can wrestle, or Aljo but because he can wrestle. But at the same time, it's like how long they can't wrestle for longer than Merab can. Like Merab's
Yeah.
can eventually take over, at least in those later rounds, or even maybe Merab just gets on him right away, and they're just like swamped in that pressure. But no striker is ever going to be able to beat that. I just straight up like, there's no way. There's no way a striker can ever deal with that. They'll never be able to get off any offense, as we just saw against Petr Yan. Petr Yan is top of the division when it comes to striking, and he just got swarmed. He couldn't do anything. Even in the early rounds, when he would throw, like he could only get off one or two punches, one or two kicks, and Merab was right there to throw something at him.
Yep.
It's pretty crazy what we just witnessed. And yeah, looking back on it, I'm like, how did I not see that coming? Like, maybe I just got excited about beating the line to like that price. I did have this like thought of hedging out, because if I would have hedged out, I would have been up a lot more. But if I did, I ended up not doing it because I was like, well, if he goes under on strikes, I hit the NHA play. If he goes over, that probably means he wins. So I would have cashed either way. But yeah, man, that's just plus 220, plus 240, somewhere around there. I'm a Rob. Like, god damn, we're gonna look back on that and be like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
that. That's just crazy. Like, is
Yep.
that he's probably never gonna be that line ever again. Like,
No.
how could you ever put him there against anyone ever again? He's just putting the fight in places that he wants it, and there's literally nothing you can do. You just can't get him off of you. Um, like the only chance that Petr Yan had was a flying knee or like some bogus uppercut. But Merab's nose is like the size of my kneecap, so it's like you're probably not going to knock this guy either.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just nuts. It's nuts. And
The other, yeah, no, I was gonna outside of Petr Yan, I mean, he's kind of on this downfall, which it could very well be the other way if he gets that split decision win against Aljo and Sean O'Malley. But I mean, now, I mean, where do you even go from here? And then another guy that is on a even worse downfall because you're losing badly is Alexander Romanov. I mean, he looked like he jumped off the couch, no training, bedhead, the whole 9 yards, man. I picked Romanov because I was trying to get too data driven and too analytic. I was looking at where the sharp money it was coming in on, and money was flooding in on his side. So I got him early until like before his line started growing towards him more as the favorite. But man, after seeing him at the weigh-ins, I should have stuck with my gut and went for Romanov because on the preview show, you and I were both heavy on Alexander Volkov to beat him if he couldn't get takedowns. And it took one stuffed takedown to break Alexander Romanov, and he was completely done. I mean, that might be the worst performance of the year so far, considering he was just 15-0 and people were fearing fighting this guy. And then you lose to Marcin Tybura, and now you lose to Alexander Volkov by first round knockout. I mean, you're gonna be lucky if you don't get cut.
yeah, I was like shocked when the fight started and Volkov was like walking him down, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you're literally just falling into this trap. Romanov shoots the takedown, slams him up against the cage, and I'm like, all right, this is not going well for me. And then he kind of had that fence grab, which helped him out a little bit there. Stuffs the takedown. Romanov's like, what the hell do I do now? Lands a couple shots, and he just gave up pretty much.
Yeah.
Folded over. The one thing that I did not like when I watched that Tybura fight, Romanov is like one of the nicest dudes. Like I don't think he has like a mean bone in his body. Like he doesn't really want to hurt you. Like he just wants to go on there and get a win, and he doesn't really want to get like dirty or anything. Volkov, that's a dirty man there.
Yeah.
He's been in the trenches, and that's why I kind of liked him in that spot. So
yeah, and Romanov too. I mean, that wrestling style worked at the lower level UFC guys, but that he's so big that it looks like the only chance he has at a takedown is a single leg. Like that's all he can get his arms around. I mean, he's got shorter arms and he's so massive that he doesn't really have any of that athleticism left, or he can't really get in tight and wrap his arms around anybody. So I don't see him having any more success in the UFC.
Yeah, he I don't know what happened. Like, how do you put that much weight back on in such a short
Yeah.
period of time?
Yeah. Had to be maybe an injury or something, but I mean,
or it could be some kind of performance enhancing drugs.
Yeah.
That he got really jacked up on, and then maybe he had to get off them.
Yeah.
Kind of, chunked out the next couple months and couldn't really get it back because he was really only like that for one fight. He looked like he was in great shape for one fight, lost. Maybe he started getting more tests because he lives out in Moldova. So he comes back, he looks, juiced up, and then maybe they started testing him a little bit more, and he can't quite get that get around it as much. But
there's something going on there. There has to be
something. We'll leave that card in the past, though. We'll get into the card, UFC 286. We got 15 fights to break down here, so stick with us. We're going to have the timestamps up for anybody that wants to skip around, and then we'll throw the individual videos out there as well. Drop a like and a comment and a subscription down below if you want to support us. We appreciate all the support. We'll get into it, though. Starting with the main event, the welterweight championship. The belt is on the line. The rematch between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. Leon Edwards sitting at plus 220. Kamaru Usman minus 220. Odds courtesy of BetOpenly, the best fight odds out there. Over under 4.5 rounds. Minus 174 for the over, plus 174 for the under. So they're expecting this one to go all 5 rounds. A rematch of what I would say is the greatest moment in sports history. That controversial, but in my opinion, it's the greatest moment in sports that I've ever witnessed, live at least. Who do you like in the rematch?
Dude, this one's tough, but we were talking before this. I know Kamaru was a heavy favorite in the first fight, and he's still, surprisingly, I mean, maybe not surprisingly, but he's a decent sized favorite here. But I mean, you match up their records. Kamaru's 20-2, Leon's 20-3. Kamaru was on that unbelievable win streak, and he beat basically Colby twice, Jorge twice, Gilbert once, and then, Tyron Woodley when he took the belt. But outside of that, he hasn't fought a bunch of amazing competition, and he's gotten by just by mauling people with that wrestling. I mean, Leon, RDA's on his record, Gunnar Nelson, Donald Cerrone, and other than that, it's guys that aren't the best of competition either. And of course, he beat Nate Diaz and knocked out Kamaru. But stylistically, we saw Leon take Kamaru down. The only time Kamaru's ever been taken down inside the UFC. Obviously, he was taken down as the fight went on against Kamaru, and Kamaru looked really good and dominant at times in that fight too. But this one's in London, man. The last one was in Utah, in the mountains at elevation where Kamaru trains. He's used to it. He can deal with that. It was pretty evident Leon was a little more tired than usual heading into that 4th and 5th round. I mean, this one, I feel like he's going to have the energy from the crowd the whole entire fight. Like, if you think the Vegas crowd was, jacked up in this last pay-per-view for the main event, this one will be off the chain. There's no crowd like London. And you got a guy from Birmingham going to be fighting. This one's going to be off the chain, and it's hard to pick against Leon in London after seeing what happened and the unknown of how's Kamaru going to look coming off of his first, knockout loss like this in his career. I mean, it wasn't just like a TKO. Like, he was eyes open, not moving, kind of, a little scary to see at times. Like, you look down there and Kamaru's got his eyes open staring at the ceiling, and he's not there at all. One of the nastiest head kick knockouts I've ever seen. Something straight out of a movie. You got Leon's corner screaming at him that you need to pull something out of the fire, jacking him up, and he goes out there and he does that. So Leon's obviously riding the momentum. Kamaru's riding the revenge. I'm going to pick Leon in this one, man. I like him. I like the odds right now, too. 2-1 dog coming off of a knockout win against the same opponent, going back to your hometown this time. The crowd's going to be hostile against Kamaru. Yeah, give me Leon Edwards here, man.
Yeah, I say rematch because it's technically the trilogy, but the first fight was so long ago, so early in their careers where you can kind of just throw it out because both guys have improved in ways that they needed to improve. I'm kind of with you, man. I mean, it's so tough because the circumstances there's a lot of circumstances to take into consideration in this one. With Kamaru's age, he's almost 36. And you look at his reign, we were kind of talking about it before, but his reign as the champion if you go back and look at it, I mean, he was so dominant throughout it where you didn't really question it. But now, once we've seen him lose in devastating fashion, it's like, can you really look back at it and say, man, that was like he was facing some great opponents? And quite honestly, I just don't really see it. I mean, taking the belt from Tyron Woodley, who never won a fight again after that, and then fought Colby Covington twice, who many people think hasn't beaten anyone, at the top of the division, which is true. I mean, his best win, I guess, is Tyron Woodley or George Masvidal, however you want to look at it. Maybe RDA, but I mean, RDA bounces between 170 and 155. So is he really a 170er?
Right.
And then George Masvidal twice, who lost, like he dominated him in the first fight, and then they give him a second fight and just knocks him out. So I mean, he already proved he could beat him once. And then Gilbert Burns, which was a good performance, but after that first round, Gilbert looked like he was kind of stunned that Kamaru couldn't finish Kamaru in that first round or anything. So it makes you question how good really is Kamaru Usman, and I don't think the skill gap between them is that big. And we look at the odds in the first match. Leon Edwards is plus 290, and now he's plus 220. So I mean, they're really not making that big of a difference in the line. They're kind of looking at it like I think most people are. Kamaru won most of the fight, and it's probably not going to be too much different in this one, but it's completely different. It's so different. There's so much mentality, so much in the headspace between both guys that makes this fight a lot different. I think Leon went out in that first round of the last fight thinking I can beat this guy, and he won that first round. And another thing is Leon had waited so long for that moment to get a chance at the title, and there's a lot that goes into the anxiety of that. And once you finally get that moment and you go out there and you have a great first round, you're all amped up, and then the second round, the second round wasn't terrible, but I think he might have gotten tired because of the mental anxiety about it. People always talk about the mental games that plays into your cardio. If you're super nervous about something, then you're doesn't really matter how good your cardio is. Your mind's going to get so worked up about it that you're going to lose your breath really quickly. I think that kind of played a role into it, along with the altitude. This is going to be on Leon's home soil. He already knows he can beat this guy. He's seen this guy hurt. Nobody had seen Kamaru hurt like that. Now he looks at this guy like he's human again. I honestly think Leon has more skills. It's just that Kamaru has that one skill that's hard to stop with the wrestling. But if Leon can, if he can just have a little bit more, it didn't even look like he was getting out skilled. When he was losing the rounds, it looked like he was just getting out muscled or out cardio.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to describe that, but it's looked like if he just tried more in those rounds, he probably could have had a better chance at winning those rounds. And then ultimately in that last round, they're like, all right, you gotta lay it all out there. This is all you got this last round, and he gets it done. Kind of pulls it out of the fire, but I mean that's what he does. So it's tough. I mean, the plus money on Leon Edwards, I kind of got to take it. It's kind of dog or pass at this point. And the things that make me want to stay away from Kamaru Usman, especially at the chalk money. He's older. He's had injury issues. If you watched any of the previews, he was talking about how he wants to be around his family more, and he was kind of going back and forth between Colorado and Florida for this camp, basically because he wanted to be more around his daughter. His daughter's going to school, and he wanted to be involved in everything like that. And he's got a promotion in Africa that he's working on. So I mean, you can kind of tell the end is near for Kamaru Usman.
Right.
and he's kind of rushing him back after like a really brutal KO. It wasn't that long ago, just last August. Maybe it's just like, all right, I need this rematch. I kind of just want to get it out of the way. I don't want to wait any longer. I just want to get it out of the way. So, maybe it was a fluke and I can beat this guy, but I just want to get it behind me and move past it. If he loses, uh, I don't know. Like, if he loses, where does he go from there?
Retirement. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, if he loses, does he stick around and fight a contender? Like, does he fight a Khamzat Chimaev? Like, does he really want to do that? Like, nah, I don't think he wants to do that. So if he loses, like, he could very well just be done. Like, or it's very odd because he was talking about fighting like Canelo in boxing before this and then gets knocked out. Haven't heard a peep about that after that. So yeah, man. I think it's kind of dog or pass, which is pretty crazy to say, but with all the circumstances taken into account, I think that's how you play it. I'm going to take Leon.
I like it.
Another great fight here. Co-main event. So we're going 0-1 against Trevor Whitman in this one. The dog is with Trevor Whitman in this one. Justin Gaethje plus 212. Rafael Fiziev minus 212. Over under set at 1.5 rounds. Minus 165 for the over. Plus 165 for the under. So they are expecting some violence in this one. Who do you like in this one? This is a tough one.
Oh man, yeah, it is. Both guys hit hard. We talked a little bit about Justin Gaethje's the damage he's taken over his career and over his last few fights. That might not be good against a guy like Rafael Fiziev. Gaethje's obviously fought the top of the division. I mean, Khabib, Poirier, Charles Oliveira, basically anybody you can think of right now at the top, Gaethje's fought there. And obviously he lands a lot of shots, but that negative strike differential, if I'm thinking right, I'm pretty sure both these guys have negative strike differentials. Am I right?
Yes, yeah, just slightly for both guys.
Yeah, but Rafael Fiziev, I guess, rolls with the punches better. He takes them a little bit better because it feels like every fight we're seeing Justin Gaethje get wobbled. And I'm not going to say Justin Gaethje has bad fight IQ because he's fighting under one of the best MMA coaches of this generation right now, one of the best striking coaches. But having those type of wrestling accolades and wrestling skill set, apparently, he used to be a phenomenal wrestler. He's never landed a takedown in the UFC, and that just blows my mind because there's been fights where he could have used that wrestling and maybe found some more success or some more wins, but he just doesn't. He likes to put on a show for the fans. He likes to stand and bang with guys, and Fiziev has that style where he's probably going to welcome that. And, what Fiziev did to RDA late in the fight showed us a lot about Fiziev, in my opinion. He still got power later on in fights. His conditioning is obviously in check. You're fighting RDA, a guy who wants to grapple you, who's going to try to take you down and wear you out. And he found that late knockout. So I think the odds, it's hard to bet on a minus 220, minus 200 favorite, especially against the guy as dangerous as Justin Gaethje. I just feel like Fiziev is going to hold more power. Maybe, I don't even want to say power because Gaethje's so wild and swings, so hard that he can knock anybody out too. But I just feel like Fiziev's that more calculated power. He's tighter. He's more technical. I think in this type of fight where it's going to be kind of stand and bang, exchange shot for shot, I think it's going to play into Fiziev's game plan a little bit better. I got to go with Rafael Fiziev in this one.
Yeah, I think as the fight goes on, it's only going to favor Fiziev because, as you kind of alluded to, Justin Gaethje's been in some wars, and we always know he's going to come out hot. He's going to want to put on a good performance for the fans. But man, the fights he's been in, it's like you look back on it, that's going to catch up to you eventually. We've kind of seen it. I mean, even early in his career, fought Michael Johnson. He gets hit. Like, look at the stats. He gets hit almost 8 significant strikes per minute. That's a lot. Like, he's just in there swinging. He lands 7.5, but he's going to take one to give one. he's been finished twice by knockout early in his career against Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. Look at that Poirier fight, man. Like, whew, Poirier put 174 on him in 4 rounds.
Yeah.
That's pretty nuts. Fiziev can put up big numbers as well. If you look at his fight against Bobby Green, he put up 104 in 3 rounds. So, I mean, he actually got outstruck in that fight, but we all know Bobby Green is a touch and go kind of guy. And in this one, I don't know if Gaethje can, like, how long can he stand in there with Fiziev? And then I look at Fiziev, he's been knocked out once, but it's by a spinning wheel kick, and I don't think Gaethje's going to be throwing any of those. Getting hit with a kick is a little bit different than a punch. You don't really see it coming, and it's usually a lot harder. You can kick a ball farther than you can usually throw it, unless you're Patty Mahomes or something like that. But you're just gonna have more power with your legs. Is the point of that. Fiziev, I just think I don't even want to say he's more technical. He's just more controlled or more calculated with his shots. Because when you look at the technicalities, like Gaethje can throw wild, but it's all like, it's not wild in the fact that there's no power behind it or there's no thought behind it. Because you look at when he does hit people hard, it's clean. Like, he finds the openings well. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Fiziev, he has a little bit smoother striking when you look at it aesthetically and everything like that. At this price, though, like, these guys are going to brawl, and I don't really want the minus 200 on a guy that it's probably going to be a brawl. Like, that's what Gaethje does best. He, like, forces guys to brawl with him. And I just don't like it. So, I mean, from a betting perspective, the experiences with Gaethje, but at the same time, it's that mileage on the chin. How is it going to hold up? But from a betting perspective, plus 200 on Gaethje, it's like, that's probably the only play in this one for me. Maybe you could take Fiziev by knockout, but with the over/under set at 1.5, you might get near plus money or somewhere around there, near even money. But yeah, I'm gonna go. I think Fiziev wins, but if I'm gonna bet on it, I don't think I could touch that money line price.
I almost like that over.
Yeah, I was actually thinking
those guys are so tough.
I was actually thinking that. Yeah, it's like that. Because everyone expected that Gaethje Chandler fight to just be like over really quickly,
right?
But Chandler comes out hot and then he kind of gasses out a little bit, and I was surprised Gaethje couldn't finish him, but at the same time, he probably didn't want to leave himself open too much after he kind of had the first couple rounds banked up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that over. Let's look at that again. Actually, what is it? Minus 165 for the over 1.5. It's kind of, you're going to be clenching. You're going to be clenching for a whole 7.5 minutes to hit that, but you got to have some balls to do that. I will say that, but it definitely could cash. Definitely could cash. We'll keep it moving. Welterweight bout between Gunnar Nelson and Bryan Barberena, plus 392 for Bryan Barberena, minus 392 for Gunnar Nelson. Over under set at 2.5 rounds, plus 128 for the over, minus 128 for the under. Bryan Barberena stepping in here for Daniel Rodriguez. Not quite on short notice, but not full camp for him. An interesting line, if I'm going to be honest, because Gunnar Nelson has never really done it for me. I don't know if it's just his style. He's got that karate type stance on the feet. Obviously wants to get to the ground. He wants to get your back, wants to grapple with you. That's where he does his work the best. He's got 13 submissions on his record. But I don't know, man. Like, we all know Bryan Barberena's takedown defense is pretty trash. And he really doesn't have a great ground game. But on the feet, I think there's a big, like, discrepancy, if we're going to be honest. I mean, look at the stats between both guys. Gunnar Nelson lands 1.83 strikes per minute. Bryan Barberena 5.92. The problem with that is Gunnar Nelson just needs to get you down once, and it's probably going to be around, especially with Bryan Barberena. Barberena showed in his last fight he could survive for a decent amount of time when he got on the ground with RDA, but RDA he's still the man. Still doing the damn thing.
I was at that fight.
That's right, you were. So what did you think when he hit the ground? Were you like, it's pretty much over, or were you giving him any kind of chance? If it hits the ground in this one, think he could survive, or do you think he could get back up?
I wanted to give him a chance against RDA to survive, not win, because of the size discrepancy. Because RDA, bounces from 155 to 170. Not the biggest 170 guy in there, but yeah, man, the ground game. If it weren't for Gunnar Nelson's grappling and being a stud on the ground, if he was just an average grappler, I'd probably be all over Bryan Barberena here as an underdog. He has the good volume. I think that's where he's gonna steal rounds or win this fight, is if he can just put this pace on Nelson, that Nelson doesn't get any room or any chance to shoot a good takedown or get this thing to the ground. Because, I mean, Gunnar's not going to go out there and just wrestle you like with this insane, explosive double legs or anything. Like, he'll work the fight to the ground, but man, if he can't do that, I just don't see, he's not going to stand and out volume or out strike Bryan Barberena here. But it's a big ask for Bryan Barberena, a guy with notoriously not so good takedown defense, to keep it on the fight here too. I mean, Gunnar Nelson, the one thing that you could hang on to if you're going for Bryan Barberena here is that he's 35 years old and he fights once every year, sometimes every 2 years. Right. So it's not like he's super active. I know he's obviously probably training and stuff, but it's not like he's in there beating up on a bunch of people often. So yeah, I don't know. I'm not really comfortable on either side of this fight from a betting standpoint. Should be interesting to see if Gunnar can get it to the ground, though, because if he does, I think he gets the win. I think a submission's obviously, very possible if this thing hits the mat. But if he struggles with the takedown, it'll get interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised he couldn't finish his last fight against Takashi Sato.
Right.
He had so much control time on the ground. And, I mean, at minus almost 400, who the hell is laying that? Like, you got to have some real confidence in my boy Gunnar Nelson and some really bad things to say about Bryan Barberena. Bryan Barberena been around for a while. I mean, so is Gunnar Nelson, but the guy's experienced. He's been in there with some really solid guys. I mean, Leon Edwards, Colby Covington, Vicente Luque. Granted, lost all three of those, but
yeah,
you look at both guys. Neither of their wins are like anything to write home about. But their losses are pretty respectable.
I was gonna say they have better losses than they do wins.
Yeah, right. Whenever they face someone like pretty good, they lose, but they'll beat the guys that they're supposed to beat for the most part, unless you're Bryan Barberena going against Jason Witt. But
that
was a bad loss. I don't know. I mean, probably Gunnar Nelson by sub if you like Gunnar Nelson. Bryan Barberena by decision probably, or by knockout.
I wish he had more power.
Yeah,
he had more power. That's a game changer in this one.
That is a big game changer because he's more of that volume guy. I mean, he almost lands like 6 significant strikes per minute, and his knockouts are kind of like accumulation of damage. Like he put it on Robbie Lawler to get him out of there.
Yep.
So yeah, that's tough because if you're going against Gunnar Nelson, like how much volume can you get off before you get taken down? I don't think his takedowns are that strong though. That's what really scares me. Like for betting on him, like he's not like this really athletic dude that can just blast double to get you. He's kind of got to pick a single leg and ride the pipe and everything. But yeah, I think Gunnar Nelson probably wins, but not touching that price.
Agree.
Jennifer Maia and Casey O'Neill. Casey O'Neill minus 168. Jennifer Maia plus 168. Over under 2.5 rounds. Over is minus 266. Under plus 266. The undefeated King Casey O'Neill coming back after a bit of a layoff. I think she tore her ACL, and she's coming back since it's been just over a month or a year and a month since her fight against Roxanne Modafferi, which she won a split decision. But my goodness, she put it on the girl, Roxanne Modafferi. I'm kind of surprised that was a split decision, but if you look at the numbers, she landed 229 significant strikes in a 3-round fight. But she got taken down a couple of times. If you her takedown defense isn't that great, like 60%, but I think that's just because she doesn't really care if it goes to the ground. Like, she's pretty confident in her ground game, but on the feet, she's a volume machine. She lands 8.65 strikes per minute, and she only gets hit 4.68, so she almost doubles up her opponents, which is pretty impressive. Jennifer Maia was on a bit of a losing streak there, and then got a win against Marina Moroz. She's fought the best of the best, though. I mean, and she really only loses to the best of the best, which is a little concerning if you're Casey O'Neill. Like, are you the best of the best? Can you beat Jennifer Maia? You look at Maia's losses: Manon Fiorot, top contender; Caitlin Chikagian, top contender; Valentina Shevchenko, top contender. Or I guess top contender now, was champion for a long time. Caitlin Chikagian again, and Liz Carmouche, who is no longer with the UFC, but still a top contender when she was there. It's kind of tempting to take Jennifer Maia as the dog because it's women's MMA, and it's like Casey O'Neill's coming back after a year off. But I think Casey O'Neill's it's probably going to be a stand-up affair. I mean, Jennifer Maia doesn't really want to take it to the ground. She'll just stand with you. I think Casey O'Neill can out volume her on the feet, and if she wants to take it to the ground, she'll probably have a bit of an advantage there. So I think Casey O'Neill is a pretty solid pick. Not crazy about the price, but it's not like too wide where I'm like, this is a little greasy, minus 160 isn't terrible. So I'll take Casey O'Neill for the pick, and I think she gets it done. Just scares me that she's coming back from that injury in a different country. She trains out of Las Vegas at Extreme Couture, so making that trip over. I mean, I don't think she's fought there before, so making that trip over for the first time is always an experience for a younger fighter. She's only 25, so I'm interested to see how she handles that, but I'll take her for the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, I think she probably wins this too. There's just that experience factor is so. I mean, there's so much experience on Jennifer Maia's side. You look at her resume. I mean, the loss to Valentina. I mean, she didn't get finished by her. Lost the French chick and Caitlin Chikagian both by decision too. I know a lot of people talked about, if Maia does get this fight to the ground, that submission game is going to be way better than O'Neill's. But I mean, in 10 UFC fights, she's got one submission win. So it's not like she's out there and, has this crazy finish rate or submission rate in the UFC. So I think Casey O'Neill's good enough to where if it did hit the mat, she'll be competent enough not to get submitted here. But on the feet, O'Neill, like you said, man, she can put it on girls. I think Maia could struggle with that a little bit. I think Maia might be slightly more technical, but I just don't see her matching this pace and volume that Casey O'Neill is going to have. And Casey O'Neill seems motivated too. If you look at her Instagram stuff, she looks like she wants it. I think on the feet, she'll be a little bit too much to handle for the older Jennifer Maia. Casey O'Neill, I'm going to take her as my pick as well.
Yeah, Casey O'Neill, 75% finish rate in the UFC. And then
that's high for women's MMA.
Very high. And then you look at Jennifer Maia, she's been to a decision every fight since 2015.
Yeah.
So she's really carrying that over when they set that line.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Casey O'Neill, Jennifer Maia is super durable, but Casey O'Neill comes for the finish. So
right.
I don't know. Maybe there's some value on that under, because how long can Jennifer Maia is like 34. How long can she stay that durable?
Yeah.
And who knows? Younger fighter, probably going to be more aggressive. We'll see. Middleweight bout between Marvin Vettori, minus 275 for Vettori. Roman Dolidze sitting at plus 275.
Oh, that's a good one.
Under 2.5 rounds, minus 188 for the over, plus 188 for the under. Marvin Vettori carrying that over as well. So a couple fighters carrying the overs. Three straight dog cashes for the boy Roman Dolidze, and they're still throwing him under at plus 275. Dang, that's really tempting. What do you think?
It is tempting, but at the same time, I feel like in some of Roman's wins, even in a lot of his fights, like as the fight goes on, he starts to get a little like tired. It seems like almost, It's like he has enough to stay in the fight and do what he needs to do. But against Vettori, Vettori is going to have 3 rounds of whatever he wants to do. I mean, Vettori is just like this super human when it comes to his chin and his cardio. It's like he doesn't get tired, he doesn't get rocked. It's weird. And if this fight goes to the ground, I think it's going to be on Vettori's watch. I don't think Roman is like doesn't have any like amazing offensive wrestling by any means. Obviously, that submission game is real, and the submission threat's really something to watch if it does hit the mat. But Vettori's so strong, and he's got such a solid base that I don't see Roman just going out there and taking him to the ground. Now, Roman does have good striking as well, and he's proved that it's gotten better over time, and he can be dangerous. But man, I just don't want to bet against him because, like you said, man, the last 3 fights he's been a big underdog and he's cashed in every single one. But at the same time, I feel like Marvin Vettori is going to be a harder fight than a Jack Hermanson. Vettori, it's another fight. I wish Vettori had knockout power because I could see him doing a lot better in this fight. But he's another guy that just kind of throws a bunch of volume at you, is fairly accurate, and he's not going to knock you out. He's not going to get knocked out. If he beats you, it's probably going to be by decision. I do love, man, Roman Dolidze. I was at that fight against Hermanson too in Orlando, and that calf slicer was ridiculous the way he wrapped that up. So he's super talented on the ground. He seems to shock us every time out when he fights. Hate betting against him. Probably won't bet against him. I'm not sure if I'll bet on him either. But for the pick, I'm going to say Vettori, man, by decision. I think this will be on the feet, and Vettori will land more. Maybe he won't look as good because he doesn't have the big power. But I do think it will stay on the feet for the most part, and Vettori will just outpoint him.
God damn, this is tough.
I know. It's a tough one, though. I'll be rooting for Roman Dolidze, though, because I like him. I think he's cool.
Yeah, I like him, too.
I love the energy. I love some of the finishes he has, especially the calf slicer. That's awesome. But, yeah. Maybe did he even finish that with the calf slicer, or did he just get locked up in that and then
he had the leg in the calf slicer, then he just ground and pounded him because he
couldn't. Okay, that's right. Yeah. But I mean, Hermanson was like, in agony from that calf slicer. You could see it on his face. But yeah, super impressive nonetheless.
Yeah. For Vettori, his only losses since 2018 are to Israel Adesanya and Robert Whittaker. So that's tough to knock him for anything like that. That performance against Whittaker his last time out didn't look good. Let's just say that. But Whittaker looked like he was on another level with the feet. Dolidze, man, it's so hard to get a grasp on how good this guy is because he comes back after a year off from a decision win against Laureano Staropoli, who's not in the UFC anymore. Before that, he lost to Trevin Giles via decision at the beginning of 2021. Comes back in 2022, June of 2022, knocks out Kyle Dawkins in the first round with that knee to the face, which just shattered his face. And then 4 months later, destroys Filho's knee and then knocks him out because I don't know who the ref was in that one. Mergliata didn't want to stop it, and Hawes wasn't gonna quit. So really should have got the submission win there, but gets the knockout because he had no leg, and then should have got another submission win against Jack Hermanson, but gets the knockout win because he ground and pounded him. So this guy's got a mean ground game, and what is interesting about him, he just, if guys want to take him down, he'll just go there. He has 33% takedown defense. So if you want to take him down, go ahead. Like he's fine with that. In those 2 fights between Hawes and Hermanson, he's got 4 sub attempts. Like that's a lot of sub attempts. He averages 2 per fight. That's pretty nuts. This guy's a beast on the ground. 80cc champ. And then on the feet, I mean, he's a violent dude. And it looks like he's been training in Thailand, so getting everything sharpened up there. And if I'm not mistaken, Vettori has moved to Extreme Couture and is training there. So that's where Dolidze normally is. So kind of a weird scenario there where Dolidze was at Extreme Couture in Las Vegas training with Eric Nixick, and then for this camp goes over to Thailand with Vettori, is then at Extreme Couture. So kind of weird. So maybe they got the in for Vettori or what? Because Nixick still commented on Dolidze's Instagram from a week ago. So I'm trying to get a grasp. I'm like, maybe I'm just reading into it. Like, what's the point of this right now for both of these fighters? Like, where do they stand with their camps and everything? Because that does play a factor. It does play a big factor. You know, if you got information on one guy, like how to beat him, see him every day. But man, these odds, I can't get behind Vettori. Dolidze's cashed 3 straight times as a dog. These 3-0 as a dog. Vettori's never been finished. He's literally just made out of complete steel. So I don't think he's gonna knock him out. But honestly, I think the way to attack this would maybe be like Dolidze by finish only, if you can get that for something, because I don't if it's decision, I don't know that Vettori loses a decision, because I can see Dolidze getting out volumed on the feet. He doesn't really throw a ton on the feet. If you look at the stats, Vettori should pretty much double him up. And if he gets takedowns, Roman Dolidze is fine with getting taken down. So if he's just going to score takedowns on him and not get submitted, then he probably wins a decision. But if this ends within the distance, I don't think Vettori's going to get a finish. I mean, he's not really a potent finisher. So if that's probably a route that I'll look to go down in this one. But betting wise, I don't like Vettori at that price. For the pick, I'll take Dolidze. I'll be that guy. Maybe I'm just a lover of Dolidze, but I like him.
And maybe Dolidze went to Thailand for a little PED use.
That's true.
It seems like that's the move.
It is the way to go. And it seems like he can get away with it there. So.
Seems like a guy that would love PEDs.
Shaping up the striking and shaping up the figure.
It's pretty ripped dude. I don't know. Maybe he's on him.
Yeah, he's got to shave his chest though.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he's got it.
He's hiding it.
Muscles. Yep. Yeah. There you go. Featherweight bout, Jack Shore minus 450, Makwan Amirkhani plus 450, over under set at 1.5 rounds, minus 133 for the over, plus 133 for the under. 1-4 in his last 5 for Amirkhani. Jack Shore losing his perfect record in his last time out at bantamweight against Ricky Simone. Decides that he wants to move up to 145. It sounds like that was a thought that he had for a while and just decided to do it. Now it sounds like he's going to be staying at 145. So usually a very big 135er. In this one, it's going to be slightly undersized, 5'8" for Jack Shore, 5'10" for Amirkhani, and a 1-inch reach advantage for Amirkhani. But if you don't know, Makwan Amirkhani, he wants to get that thing to the ground. And he wants to hit that anaconda choke, which he has been able to in the past, but not as of recently, unless you look at the fight from last year's card. In March in London, got that anaconda choke in the first round. A big underdog in this one. I don't know. I mean, Amirkhani's wins are not that great, but Jack Shore coming up in weight as a big favorite, and he's not really like a potent finisher.
Right.
But maybe that had a bit to do with the weight. Maybe he just didn't have a ton of cardio in the tank for those fights and power going into those fights because he's cutting all that weight. But in this one, Amirkhani is going to come out hot, and I think the best way to go about this is if you like Amirkhani, take him in that first round by sub. If you don't and you like Jack Shore, I'd probably wait until after that first round, because Amirkhani tends to win the first round, or at least keep it close, and you'll probably get a better price on Jack Shore. So I think Jack Shore probably wins, but Makwan is live in that first round. I mean, he goes for those takedowns early, and he's great at snatching up that neck, snatching up that anaconda. I mean, he's got 4 of them in the UFC.
Yeah.
3 of them in the UFC, 4 submissions in total. Goes to decision, man. This guy pretty much burns out after the second round. I could see a second round or third round finish for Jack Shore. So whatever those odds are, I'll definitely be looking at it. What about you?
Yeah, you look at Amirkhani. First of all, I want to point out the video you had on him has the coolest Tapology picture of any
Oh, yeah.
fighter. It's him with a bunch of females surrounding him.
I said
Jack Shore.
it looks like a cologne commercial. Cologne
Yeah,
commercial.
yeah,
Shit
like
around him in this like
yep.
suit. It's funny as hell.
Yeah, and Jack Shore had a ton of hype around him going into his last fight, and then Ricky Simone got that arm triangle choke, and you know, kind of not necessarily shocked me, but I thought Shore was going to win that fight just because of how good he looked. But I think bumping up that stiffer competition, it showed that Jack Shore is a human. But in this fight, I think Jack Shore has the grappling and the wrestling to keep this thing on the feet if that's where he wants it. I think he should be the better striker. I don't necessarily see a finish happening on Jack Shore's side. If anybody gets finished, I think it's like you talked about Amirkhani finding something in the first round, because he almost seems like he's a round one submission or bust. Like if he gets past that first round, and he doesn't have a submission in the bag, you can almost see like he just kind of the confidence drops drastically. And in a fight against Jack Shore, man, I think Jack Shore will just kind of take the fight wherever he wants to go. He'll control the fight and be the one kind of dictating on the feet. So, yeah, man, this one's pretty cut and dry. If you're going to play Amirkhani, do it by submission. I think that's his only shot to win this fight. And if you like Jack Shore, I would say it's by decision. I think he just kind of plays this one safe, needs to get back in the win column. Doesn't really put himself in any danger with the wrestling and grappling, leave his neck out there or anything. I think he just kind of controls the fight wherever it is and gets that decision win.
Lightweight bout between Chris Duncan and Omar Morales. Slight plus money, plus 115 on Chris Duncan, minus 115 for Omar Morales. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 185 for the over, minus 185 for the under. Chris Duncan making his debut. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, Chris Duncan, he looks like from what we've seen on Contender Series, he's a fun guy to watch. Gets cracked. That knockout he had, that straight right, was disgusting. But then Omar Morales obviously is going to have the experience, has a lot more UFC caliber fights in his arsenal, not in his arsenal, but in his resume. I mean, Jonathan Pierce and Uros Medic, obviously he lost both of those fights, but those are two pretty good fighters, especially Jonathan Pierce. So he's seen good fighters before. It's all going to come down to, can Chris Duncan find that chin? And when he gets hit, can that chin hold up against some of the higher level competition that he's going to be seeing? I mean, Chris Duncan in the Contender Series, there was a point in that fight I thought it was over for him.
Yeah.
It kind of made me nervous. I did bet on him in that fight, but then he just turned it on. He never gave up and found the finish himself. But I'm not confident, or I haven't seen enough of him to lay the money on him here. It just made me so nervous seeing him get clipped like that in a lower level fight. Omar Morales, let's see, his last win was against Shane Young. He hasn't really finished anybody in a long time either. So if I had to lean for a pick, I'm going to say Chris Duncan. I'm going to go with the guy who obviously has a shitload of power, and Omar Morales kind of struggling at the time. So, yeah, give me Chris Duncan here.
Yeah, I got to agree with you. I mean, usually like to fade the guys coming in off Contender Series or guys making their debut, but after watching the film on this guy, Chris Duncan, and seeing what he did in that Contender Series fight last year, I like the way he fights. He can leave himself open to getting cracked a couple times, but his only loss is to Vyacheslav Borshev, who is a beast on the feet and really just he wins the stand-up fights. His only losses are to guys that took him down. And Chris Duncan now training at a American Top Team with the likes of Grant Dawson and Thiago Moises. He's getting the rounds with really high-level guys. I think that's a great thing for him. He's even got a picture with George Masvidal. So I think he's making some good improvements. He's a younger fighter, 29 years old. He's had some experience in Bellator. He's 3-0 in Bellator. So 3 finishes in Bellator as well. So I think he's got enough to take on Omar Morales in this one and get the win at slight plus money. I'm actually a little surprised that he's an underdog, a slight underdog at that. But Omar Morales, 3-3 in the UFC, coming off 2 knockout losses. So obviously we don't like that. We don't like to see that at all. And he's 37. So he doesn't look like he's 37, but he's 37. And the younger fighter by 8 years, a guy coming off 2 KO losses compared to a guy making his debut. There's the fact that maybe Morales needs a win here to keep his job that I like to get behind. We'll keep an eye on it as the week goes on as far as where the money's at, because I feel like this could be a bit of a trap. But I'm going to take Chris Duncan for the pick. I think he should win. But as a slight dog, I'm kind of confused on that line. So I'll take it for the pick, though. Lightweight bout, Sam Patterson making his debut against Yanal Ashmoz, who's also making his debut. Plus 245 for Ashmoz, minus 245 for Patterson. Over-under set at 2.5 rounds, plus 124 for the over, minus 124 for the under. Ashmoz undefeated, coming in from the PFL Contender Series. Sam Patterson, 1 loss on his record, coming in from the Dana White Contender Series. Who do you think wins this one?
Man, Sam Patterson, let's see, he probably ties for the tallest fighter at 155 with Jalen Turner.
He's got
6'3" or so.
Giving Jalen Turner a run for his money there.
And he looks every bit of it in the octagon. I mean, I think that how, skinny and lanky he is just makes him look even taller. But on the feet, it's not like he has this devastating power, and he's not like the sharpest striker by any means. He loves going for those chokes. He's got a lot of guillotines on his record. If you shoot in on him, he's going to be looking for it. He's not like the strongest guy, though. So at this level, that's what's going to worry me is guys who can close that distance. I think are going to give him problems. Guys that can strike at range with him are going to give him problems. And I mean, I've seen him get cracked in previous fights too before. He's not necessarily go out or get knocked out in those fights, but there was a few times where he was shaky and it was definitely becoming pretty easy for his opponents to find the chin as the fights went on. But his opponent fought in the PFL's Challenger Series, Yanal Ashmoz, and he's kind of a guy, like from what I've seen at least, that is a decent striker with some power, a decent wrestler and grappler. He doesn't do any one thing phenomenally. And the one big disadvantage, obviously, and I think this is a lot of where the odds are coming from here, is that he is going to have a 8 or 9 inch reach disadvantage. He's only 5'10", I believe, fighting a guy who's 6'3". And, he doesn't have a whole lot of experience on his resume either. He does have a lot of finishes, though. I believe he's got 6 wins. He's 6-0, and I think 5 of those are by finish. Yeah, 3 by knockout, 2 by submission. So obviously he has a little bit of power. He's competent enough to find submissions as a professional. I don't think that he should be this big of an underdog here, though. I watched Sam Patterson fight, and I just don't see it. I don't see him being this big of a favorite. Both guys making their UFC debut, so it's not like he's got that UFC level experience over Ashmoz by any means. I think if Ashmoz can get in close, I think Sam Patterson could struggle with that strength a little bit. I really do. Ashmoz is able to get takedowns, as we saw in the PFL Challenger Series, and he does land some decent ground and pound too. I don't think he's necessarily going to go out there and submit Sam Patterson by any means. I think if we do see a submission, it's probably Sam Patterson finding the neck when Ashmoz shoots in for a takedown or something. But when you watch Ashmoz strike, when he is in close, I mean, he does have a lot of torque, and he's got a lot of power with those hooks. Not necessarily real calculated or accurate with it, but if he does find the chin, he can be dangerous. I just see more, for some reason, I just see more ways to win this fight for Yanal Ashmoz. I could see him clipping Sam Patterson and finding a KO or a TKO. I can see him taking him down and just kind of using that strength and power on top, land some ground and pound and steal rounds on points. If Sam Patterson wins, man, I really do think it's got to be by a guillotine, or he's going to take the back at some point, get those long legs in, get the hooks in, and find a rear naked choke. But at this price, I'm going to lean the underdog here. Yanal Ashmoz, I'm thinking about putting a bet on it too.
Yeah, I kind of see that as well. I mean, it's tough to get behind close to minus 250 when you don't really know much about either guy. Like,
right. Yeah.
what kind of level of competition have they been beating? I mean, there's always, you can look at records, but like records don't really tell the full story. Um, and it's very tough to judge. So I probably won't be betting on this fight. If I do, it'll probably be a prop or something like that. But yeah, I could see a world where Ashmoz comes out here and is just a more aggressive fighter and just kind of puts Patterson in positions he doesn't want to be, or positions where he can't utilize that strength or those limbs. So yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from. If Patterson gets it done, um, I mean, he's only got one win by decision. So I mean, he's a potent finisher, but I don't know. This one's just really greasy. Like Ashmoz, I watched that fight against Ryan Rizko back in 2021. Uh, he was losing that fight. Like he lost both of those, the first round and the second round, and then the third round, the guy is just like, his opponent is just completely gassed. Like he had to hit him one time, the guy went down. Wasn't knocked out or anything. Like just hit him one time, the guy went down, and he got a ground and pound finish. Like that guy was just completely donezo. And then the win on the PFL Challenger Series didn't really get my butterflies going. He was a minus 335 favorite in that one. Decision win. I'll probably just lay off. I'll take Patterson for the pick. Maybe there's something I'll see later in the week, but yeah, kind of echo everything that you just said. Flyweight bout between Muhammad Mokaev, minus 688 for Mokaev, plus 688 for Hafel Filho. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 133 for the over, minus 133 for the under. The undefeated Muhammad Mokaev making his third fight in London at the O2 in the past year. So he's going to be a familiar face there. Who do you like in this one? You giving the dog a chance at all?
I really want to. I'm going to come out and say it, and people might not like it. I think Muhammad Mokaev as a mixed martial artist is a tad overrated and is a lot of hype. I'm not saying he's a overrated, grappler or wrestler, because obviously, he's really good and he's fun, in that department. But
Hater.
I am a hater. I'm not a big Mokaev fan.
Those are the comments. Those are the comments coming at you. Hater.
Oh yeah, hater. Yeah, for sure. But at the same time, like against Malcolm Gordon, a guy who's been, submitted a handful of times, knocked out a handful of times, and I know he found that armbar late, but he was kind of slowing down, and Gordon was kind of having his moments as that fight went on. I know Gordon's kind of an aggressive fighter, and it's kind of all or nothing with him, and he's on this card as well. But if Mokaev, I think Mokaev beats a lot of lower level and mid level strikers just by using that grappling. But the guy he's fighting in Hafel Filho, he, if I believe, it wasn't Contender Series. The fight before that, he won by arm triangle. He gets a lot of chokes, rear naked chokes. He has a handful of TKO and knockout victories as well. And he is 14-2. So it's not like Mokaev's fighting another guy that's, inexperienced or doesn't have a lot of fights on his record. This guy's been fighting a while. And I just love that finishing rate, man. He's got 14 wins and he's got 13 of them by finish, 8 submissions, 5 knockouts. So Mokaev's going to be wanting to take this to the ground and grapple, but you're going to be doing that against a guy with 8 submission wins on his record. So I think this fight could be a lot closer than the odds are indicating. I do think Mokaev, probably wins, but I see a world where this hype train kind of comes to a halt here, especially with the rumor, and not even a rumor because Mokaev has come out to say it. He almost rescheduled or pulled out of this fight because he thought he was going to have shoulder surgery. Ended up being something that he could just get rehab and would be ready to go. So that kind of makes me nervous as well. A grappler with a shoulder injury, it's not exactly what you want to hear going into a fight as a minus 800, minus 900 favorite. So that's interesting stuff as well. I don't know, man. One of these fights, I think Mokaev's hype train is going to come to an end. I don't think he's a guy that just makes this huge run in the UFC and goes all the way to the title. So, Mokaev probably wins. Not going to be surprised if you see Hafel Filho get this one done either.
I'm going to agree with you. I don't think you can ever touch minus 688 on Mokaev.
No.
Until he really proves, like, the thing that I don't like about Mokaev is he thinks he's kind of invincible and he can't lose, which is hard to really snap out of him until he loses. Like, he hasn't really lost much in his career. I think he's undefeated as an amateur as well, and he's like never lost a wrestling match or anything. So he just doesn't think he can lose. And one of these times he's going to go out there not thinking he can lose, and he's going to lose. He's going to get finished. We saw it in his last fight against Malcolm Gordon. He's like a minus 1,000 favorite, and it was obviously wasn't. He was actually minus 1,400 in that one. So the line was way wider than it looked when you're watching the fight. You know, he might be a minus 300, minus 400 against Gordon, but minus 1,400 is just insane. You look at these lines, he's always going to be a big favorite until he loses. And this Rafael Filho guy, he's dangerous everywhere the fight goes. So, yeah, I mean, it might even be worth a sprinkle on Filho. I'm not saying he's going to win, but, you know, you're getting plus 688 on a guy just to win. Like,
yeah.
I could see a world where Filho opposes some kind of threat, and Mokaev kind of feels that, and he's like, "Shit, I need to like just control this guy for the next couple rounds and win the rounds because I wasn't prepared for this." And like you said, coming in with a possible injury, I don't really like that either. I think he wants to be that youngest champion, so he's kind of like rushing these fights, and he's just kind of taking a fight, and maybe that's why he's fighting with this possible injury. So he wants to get those fights in so he can get a title shot before he gets too old, so that he's not the youngest champion. I think it's gonna backfire on him eventually. Maybe not this time, but yeah, he should win. I mean, he's the better mixed martial artist. Just comes down to if he's focused enough and if he's ready enough.
Yeah.
So I'll take him for the pick. Featherweight bout between Leroy Murphy, who's been off for a little bit over a year. Gabriel Santos, who's making his debut undefeated, plus 158 for Gabriel Santos, minus 158 for Leroy Murphy. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 138 for the over, plus 138 for the under. Both guys are technically undefeated. One draw for Leroy Murphy against our boy Zubi Tahugov, who is no longer with us in the UFC. Last time out against Makwan was actually about a year and a half ago, and he knocked him out in the second round with a knee to the face, which was pretty nasty. But I watched this guy, Gabriel Santos. What did he fight in? Was it LFA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, LFA. He took a couple shots. He kind of got dropped a couple times in that fight with Marcio Barbosa, and then battled back and got that head kick in that second round and knocked him out. But he's kind of hittable on the feet. But he can throw. He can throw. And you look at Leroy Murphy, he's kind of low volume on the feet, which I think Gabriel Santos can start to put a little bit of a pace on him as the fight goes on. And that kind of scares me if you're going to bet on Leroy Murphy. I'm actually surprised this line's not wider in favor of Leroy Murphy. So the books are respecting Gabriel Santos. They really think could be something, which I think he's pretty talented. He's got that win against Elvis Brenner, who we just saw beat Zubi Tahugov. So if you look at MMA math, he should get this win. But it's hard to bet against Leroy Murphy at home. Yeah, and against the guy making his debut. The line is pretty playable. I'll probably keep this one on the radar. But for the pick, I'll take Leroy Murphy in this one. I think he's going to have the more significant strikes. I'm not saying Santos isn't powerful, but he's more of he'll put it on you with the volume, and if he can accumulate some damage as it goes on. That's how he's been getting his finishes lately. I mean, 2 decision wins since 2020. He's got 2 decision wins and then a round 2 finish and a round 3 finish. For Leroy Murphy, a little bit more power to him, and he's still technically undefeated. So I'll go Leroy Murphy. What do you think?
Yeah, Leroy Murphy. I mean, just watching side by side these two guys, it seems like Leroy's going to have that more like crisper boxing style striking. But Yeah, man, Gabriel Santos is dangerous. He's the last two guys he's got a knockout or TKO against in LFA have been 12-2 and 13-1. So that's pretty impressive to be able to do against guys that are, have that good of a record. Murphy, though, I think the home crowd will make somewhat of a difference here. I mean, you're not making your UFC debut. Gabriel Santos is, and he's coming into enemy territory, into a hostile crowd. Leroy Murphy obviously has, you touched on it. He's got finishes in later rounds. He's going to have a little bit more power. It would kind of slightly worry me if Gabriel Santos finds a way to get this thing to the ground, though. I would be a little bit nervous in that aspect because Santos has finishing ability on the ground, and Leroy Murphy obviously wants to keep this thing standing. So it is pretty intriguing. I do like Leroy Murphy here. I think the experience factor mixed in with, being in London, I think it's going to be tough for a UFC newcomer like Gabriel Santos to come in there and beat Murphy, a guy who, obviously is going to want this win as bad as you can possibly get it. Leroy Murphy is going to be the pick. I'm probably not going to bet on either side, though, if I'm being honest here. It just feels like one of those fights that you kind of underestimate a guy like Gabriel Santos, who has a lot of different ways to finish fights.
Yeah, the unknowns with him and the unknowns with Leroy with a year and a half off. Little sketch. Middleweight bout between Christian Leroy Duncan and Dusko Todorovic. Plus 180 for Todorovic, minus 180 for Duncan. Over under 1.5 rounds, plus 115 for the over, minus 115 for the under. The undefeated Christian Leroy Duncan making his debut off of the Cage Warriors. Who do you got in this one?
Yeah, Cage Warriors is obviously a good promotion, and he's found a lot of early finishes. In his last 2 or 3 fights, I think he had a rear naked choke in the first round, and he had a spinning elbow and punches in round 1 against Marian Dimitrov. But the thing with me is betting on these UFC newcomers. It's just so tough, and it seems like these days there's every single card you get, 2, 3, 4, even like this card. But Dusko Todorovic, I know we got that last win against Jordan Wright, but that first round did not go his way whatsoever. And obviously, we know Jordan Wright. I can't remember. Did he get cut by the UFC after that last loss?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and if not, I mean, he's been bullied in the octagon at times. So yeah, it makes me nervous. It's kind of another game of the unknowns for Christian Duncan. I think he should probably get the win over Dusko Todorovic. Todorovic can be, a pretty technical, decent striker on the feet. He is 12-3. He's not a guy that stands out to you and you think is going to go out there and just flatline guys by any means. I mean, he beat Jordan Wright in the second round via TKO, but I mean, like I was talking about, Jordan Wright has not looked good in the UFC, and he always gets finished, with exception to his last fight. And then he loses to Chidi Njokuani, then a ground and pound TKO over Maki Pitolo. But other than that, man, he just hasn't really fought anybody, so it's hard to get a good read on him as well. And if it's going to be a guy like Dusko Todorovic taking on an undefeated UFC newcomer, I just don't like, or I don't feel comfortable on either side. For my pick, though, I am going to go with Christian Duncan. I think he's got a little bit more promise. We kind of know what you're going to get with Dusko, and Christian Leroy Duncan kind of more ways to win. Might be a little bit more aggressive. He's making his UFC debut. Kind of home territory for him as well. So I think all signs point to Duncan should be getting this thing done. But again, just not a fight that I'm super confident in by any means.
Yeah, I think Christian Duncan get the win here. But that price is a little concerning. Cage Warriors, as you said, is a respectable promotion. That's where all his fights have taken place, and he's won all those fights. So he's getting it done. The only thing is that price. Like he's almost a 2-1 favorite against Dusko, who's pretty dangerous in that first round. But I mean, his win, you can't really get behind many of his wins, other than Michel Pereira, he fought in the Serbian Battle Championship back in 2018 and knocked him out in the first round. And now Pereira is, I think he's a ranked welterweight or around somewhere around there. But looks like Duncan is training at Tiger Muay Thai. He's got a picture on his Instagram with Filho, so he's getting some good work there. He looked really good on film. I think He's an explosive guy with a lot of finishing ability, athletic dude. Dusko doesn't really jump off the board in any certain realm of mixed martial arts. He's just kind of a fighter, man. I mean, he's not really a big on the takedowns, not really a crisp striker, just kind of a brawler. He's gonna come at you, throw a lot of volume, and he can get taken down. 45% takedown defense. So he's just a wild fighter, man.
Yeah.
And as a dog like that, it's not a terrible play to bet on almost a 2-to-1 dog who's just going to come out there and be wild. But I don't really see it happening in this one. I think it's probably a good debut for Christian Leroy Duncan. So I'll take him for the pick. But I don't know about the price. Maybe take him by knockout or inside the distance or something like that, because I don't see this one going the full distance with Dusko. He's a kind of a killer be killed fighter. Flyweight bout between Jake Hadley and Malcolm Gordon, plus 345 for Malcolm Gordon, minus 345 for Jake Hadley. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 142 for the over, plus 142 for the under. We talked about Malcolm Gordon a little bit earlier against Muhammad Mokaev. He was a big underdog, around plus 1,000, somewhere around there, and showed that he could put up a fight against a guy who has a lot of hype around him. And then he gets the draw against Jake Hadley, who has as much hype, but a lot of respect around his name and what he can do in the future. He's 26 years old. Dropped his UFC debut against Alan Nascimento, kind of got controlled for most of that fight. That fight pretty much took place on the ground the whole time. Comes out against Carlos Candelario and kind of puts it on him and gets the finish in the second round. This guy looks good on the feet. I mean, that's probably he's a capable grappler, but he probably wants to keep this fight on the feet if we're being honest. But who knows? Maybe he shoots a takedown on Malcolm Gordon. He's got 100% takedown accuracy, so he can get it done. Malcolm Gordon, kind of a wild fighter as well. I mean, both these guys. I don't expect this one to last very long. Flyweight unders have been doing pretty well, and both guys really go after you right away. Malcolm Gordon, I think he's kind of game. He's kind of a live dog in this one at that price, plus almost 350. It's a flyweight fight. It's kind of like that heavyweight thing. Like the dogs are always live in a heavyweight fight. Dogs are always live in a flyweight fight. I think wherever this fight goes, could get an upset. I think Jake Hadley should win. I think he probably does win. But Malcolm Gordon might be fighting for his job. If we look at his UFC career, he's 2-3, and he's 2-3 in his last 5. So that's his full UFC career. Kind of needs a win here, and it seems like they're maybe setting him up to get him out of there. Gave him Mokaev and then gave him Hadley, 2 up and comers. So maybe he fights with a little chip on his shoulder and pulls off the upset. But I'm going to go with Hadley for the pick. I don't know if I could touch that money line, though, with this being a flyweight fight. Not necessarily the highest level, but 2 solid fighters. I'll take Hadley. What do you think?
This one's got upset and parlay buster written all over it to me. I mean, yeah, Hadley should win. He's the better all-around mixed martial artist, in my opinion. He can hang on the ground. He can strike on the feet. But Malcolm Gordon, we touched on it earlier. He had his moments against Muhammad Mokaev. He's beaten a couple of guys, and then the guys he's lost to, Sumaderji, who's a good striker, and he can find the chin pretty easily, and then Amir Albazi, who's kind of an up-and-coming stud too. So Malcolm Gordon will kind of lay it all out there to try to get the wins and get the finishes. And if Hadley's not careful, I think he could get upset here. I think Hadley should win. Again, I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen or I'm going to bet the house on it, but this is just one of those fights where Hadley, only 8-1. Gordon's going to have a lot more experience against, pretty tough fighters in some of his fights. Hadley on the ground, I don't necessarily think he'll have a big advantage, but Gordon has a lot of finishing capability if that fight does go to the ground. And he's a fast guy. So it's just one of those fights, man. I don't think Hadley's a good play, obviously, on the money line. I don't think he's a good guy to put in a parlay either. It's just one of those fights you look back and think, man, that was the one I needed to hit, and this 4-leg parlay would have hit. Yeah, something just, I don't know. Something's bugging me about this line,
Something
this fight.
stinks.
Yeah,
Something
something's up with
stinks.
it. I think even though Malcolm Gordon has, a handful of these losses on his record and he's 2-3 in his last 5, I do think he's a better fighter than that. I think he's a dangerous fighter for having that record. Again, he's not going to sit back and play this thing safe. He's going to look to finish you.
Yeah.
He might get finished in the process, but he will, at least, if you're betting on him, he will give your bet a chance to cash as an underdog because he is going to be aggressive and he is going to, he kind of has that kill or be killed instinct. So, yeah, for the pick, I'm going to go ahead and take Malcolm Gordon. I just Hadley, that fight against Alan Nascimento, just
Yeah.
it was kind of a hype derailer, even though he didn't have like a shitload of hype behind him or anything. Coming off the Contender Series, people were high on him. Yeah, he was going to be a good prospect, but Alan Nascimento put a stop to all that. He did bounce back with a good win after, but it's going to be a tougher fight than people think. I think Malcolm Gordon isn't the worst fighter on the planet. I like the aggressiveness, and I like that big underdog number. Give me Malcolm Gordon.
Hey, you're going from Muhammad Mokaev grappling to Jake Hadley grappling.
Exactly.
Might feel a little bit easier.
Yep.
Flyweight bout between Joanne Wood and Luana Carolina. Plus 175 for Carolina, minus 175 for Wood. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 307 for the over, plus 307 for the under. I think this one ends within the distance. I mean, we've looked at Joanne Wood. Her last 2 fights, she's been finished in the first round. So interesting spot there. She's 7-8 in the UFC, which is pretty nuts. A losing record in the UFC, but look at her losses in the past. She really only loses to like the best of the best as well. I mean,
right. Yep.
Title challenger, Tyler Santos, the current champion, Alexa Grasso, her last one out a year ago. Lauren Murphy, split decision loss. Jennifer Maia, who we talked about earlier, Kaylin Chikagian, and then a couple years ago, we won't need to keep going with that. But and then you look at Luana Carolina, who got knocked out in London last year around this same time against Molly McCann with that spinning back elbow, which was pretty nasty. So interested to see how she bounces back from that. But taking a year off, I think, was the right idea because it was pretty nasty, and she needed to take a good amount of time off. I think she'll come back in this one. In the same arena, probably looking for a little bit of a revenge. And coming in as a dog, I got to say, I think maybe it's just recency bias on Joanne Wood, but I think Luana Carolina kind of a live dog here. She's not terrible on the feet. Like she's pretty solid. 4.64 strikes landed per minute and a positive strike differential there. Pretty good takedown defense as well. And I know she kind of got blitzed by Molly McCann, but then after that, she kind of started to fight her way back into that fight until she got spinning back elbowed. But before that, she got a win against Lupita Godinez, who is now a 115er, but she got a win against her, who I think Godinez is pretty solid. Poliana Botelho, split decision. That knee bar loss to Lipsky was pretty nasty. I hate watching those, but this fight is probably going to stay on the feet. Both women like to keep it on the feet. Joanne Wood has been subbed her past 2 times out. She got rocked by Tyler Santos, which ultimately led to her getting submitted. But it's probably going to be a stand-up affair unless Joanne Wood takes it to the ground. She averages 1.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. But I just don't see her really wanting to do that in this one. I think Carolina, she's not like a great takedown specialist. She's about 50%. So it's not great there. The big problem with me when I look at this fight is I'm like, what is Joanne Wood fighting for at this point? Like, what does she really have to gain?
Yeah.
Formerly Joanne Calderwood and now Joanne Wood because she got married to the head coach at Syndicate MMA, John Wood. So is she just doing this because, her husband is the coach there and she's just kind of being around it and continuing to compete because she's 37 and she's on a 3-fight losing streak. Like there's really no shot to like be at a title anytime soon. So it's like, why are you still doing it? I I just kind of struggled to get there. For Luana Carolina, I think there's more of an incentive there. She kind of wants to get that one back in London. And as the dog price, I think that's a pretty decent price. So I'm going to take Luana Carolina as the younger fighter, a lot more to prove. I think the better striker at this point in their career, and I think she gets it done. What about you?
Yeah, I think she will be maybe a little bit more powerful of a striker, like a little bit more sharp. And you do look at JoJo Wood's last, let's just say 5 fights. She's 1-4, but the losses. I mean, the champ, Tyler Santos, who almost beat the former champ in Valentina, Lauren Murphy, who's fought for a belt, I believe, and Jennifer Maia, who's a decent fighter. She also lost to Caitlin Chukagian. So I mean, her losses aren't to girls who suck by any means. But at this stage in their careers, you kind of touched on it, man. I think Luana, probably the younger, hungrier fighter in this situation. She does have, I believe, she's got a handful of knockouts out of her 8 wins, doesn't she? Let me see. No, just 2. Never mind. I was looking at the wrong side. So yeah, I think I don't think anybody's going to get finished here. I do think Luana is probably going to be sharper on the feet, maybe have that speed advantage as well. And on the ground, she does have a submission win. And JoJo Wood, I believe, has been submitted 5 times in her career. Obviously, Luana is not going to be to the level of some of these girls that JoJo has been beat by. But there are some unknowns too in this fight too. I mean, Luana probably going to be one of her toughest fights, and JoJo Wood definitely fighting down here too. So it's one of those things. You look at the record on JoJo Wood and you see all these losses, but then again, look who she's losing to, and she gets to fight down now instead of keep fighting these tougher and tougher girls. So honestly, I think it could be a good fight, a pretty even fight for the pick. I'm going to go with the younger, hungrier fighter in Luana here, but probably not going to bet on this one.
Yeah, a greasy one. We'll leave it
Definitely.
Lightweight bout between Jai Herbert and Ludovic Klein. -175 for Klein, +175 for Herbert. Over/under set at 2.5 rounds, +142 for the over, -142 for the under. Ludovic Klein coming off a big underdog cash against Mason Jones. Looks like he's going to stick at 155. Came into the UFC at 145. Got a win against Shane Young. Couple losses against Mike Trizano and Nate Landwehr. Moves up to 155 against Devontae Smith. Gets a split decision win. And then a good cash as a +310 dog against Mason Jones his last time out. Looked really good in that one. So it sounds like he's going to be sticking at 155. He looked big in that one, too. I mean, for a guy that came up in weight, he looked a lot bigger than Mason Jones. Jai Herbert, a win in his last time out in London against Kyle Nelson. He was a -265 favorite in that one. Got a 29-28 victory in that one on a couple of the judges' scorecards, I believe. And then a knockout loss against Ilia Topuria, and we were talking a little bit about it earlier. It doesn't really seem like he's as willing to be throwing those hands because, he's got pretty good hands. Really long dude. He's going to have a reach advantage in this one against Ludovic. But I think Ludovic gets this one done. He's the favorite. So that's not really saying anything out of the ordinary, but I think he could actually muscle up Jai Herbert too. I mean, in his last fight against Mason Jones, he kind of muscled him up and kind of made him his bitch. Like he looked like he was at his peak performance in that fight. Maybe it's a little recency bias on my part, but I think his kickboxing is really good too. I mean, he throws that left kick to the head really hard. He actually throws that like jump kick where he just jumps and then throws that kick to your face, which is pretty wild to watch. And he lands it fairly accurately. I think he's going to be better on the feet, a little more powerful on the feet. Jai is crisp, doesn't quite have that pop. Did rock Ilya a little bit with that kick, but I don't see that really happening in this one. I'm going to go with Ludovic Klein. I just think he has a little bit brighter future ahead of him in this division, at least. Kind of a resurgence for him after losing a couple. He's the younger fighter as well by 6 years. Jai Herbert, 34. So really, where do you go from here if you're him? So I'm gonna go with Ludwig Klein. What about you?
Yeah, I actually love Ludwig Klein here. And it seems like both fighters are kind of trending in opposite directions. I mean, Ludwig Klein went over Devontae Smith and then went over Mason Jones, which he showed he's tough. He showed he can crack, and he showed he can fight for all 3 rounds. I mean, there's times in that fight where I don't know how Mason Jones was still standing. Mason Jones looked like the toughest dude in the world, and that's not really what you want to build your name off of, because Ludwig Klein, that boxing kickboxing style with the kicks and the combinations. I mean, he looks super sharp on the feet when he's in this flow state. I mean, he can really, I mean, his hand speed, his accuracy at times is really, really good. And then you look at the opposite side in Jai Herbert, the knockout to Ilya Tapuria, like you said, that we talked about, man, he just looks a little hesitant since then on the feet. And that's not, if you're hesitant against a guy like Ludwig Klein, there's a chance you go to sleep, because Ludwig Klein will find the chin, and he hits pretty damn hard as well. And then he did get a win following that Tapuria fight, but it's not like he went out there and made a statement coming off of a loss. So, I mean, it was Kyle Nelson too, and you went all the way to decision with Kyle Nelson. I mean, Kyle Nelson, just saw him fight recently. He's obviously not a terrible fighter, but he's not a guy that people fear by any means. So, I just think they're kind of trending in opposite directions. I know this will be a home soil fight for Jai Herbert, but someone in his position, coming off of the bad knockout to Tapuria, being a little bit hesitant, and then having all the pressure of trying to get the win in front of your home, fans in your home country, it just adds to the pressure. And in his situation, man, I don't like it. I don't think it's something that he feeds off of. I think it's something that makes him even a little bit more hesitant, because he doesn't want to get knocked out in front of his fans. So I think Klein's going to come in, do what he always does. I think he will be kind of better everywhere this fight goes, if I'm being honest. He does have 8 submission wins, 8 knockout wins, so he's capable on the ground as well, and he's capable to find that neck and snatch something up. Yeah, man, give me a little bit Klein. I like this play a lot, actually. I'm going to take him. I'm going to have bets on him as the week goes on, and I'm fairly confident on this one. I like him.
I like it. The curtain jerker, first fight of the night, flyweight bout between Veronica Hardy, formerly Veronica Machado, versus Juliana Miller, sitting at minus 382 for Miller, plus 382 for Hardy. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 115 for the over, minus 115 for the under. So a couple girls who don't have a ton of fights under their record. But you look at Veronica Hardy, she hasn't fought since 2020. So she's 3 years removed from her last competition. I'm interested to see how much she's been working, or like what brought her back. She's 1-4 in the UFC. I don't even know like where to go off of this. Like, is she really UFC caliber? Like, her only win is against Polyana Viana via armbar in the UFC. Her last fight against Bea Malecki, I watched it today, and I gotta say that was probably one of the worst fights I've ever watched, especially in the UFC. Like, straight up, Veronica Hardy got like she must have been just gassed, because she shot 9 takedowns in total, didn't land a single one, but they weren't even like takedowns. Like, they were just diving at ankles. It looked like a DB like trying to tackle a running back or something, just like diving at ankles. And her striking on the feet, she landed 93 strikes, but she threw 258. Like, she was just throwing those hands anywhere possible. Bea Malecki, not much better when I watched it. It was a rough watch. We'll just say that. Like, if you ever have time and you want to laugh a little bit, I was literally laughing watching. I'm like, what the hell is this? Yeah, it was a rough one, but I just don't think she's like UFC caliber at all. And I'm looking at Juliana Miller, like, this girl's young, she's hungry, she seems like she's got a big chip on her shoulder. She's a really good grappler. I can definitely see why she's this big of a favorite. The only thing that scares me is like maybe she comes into this one too confident, and Hardy snatches up some kind of submission, because Juliana Miller is going to look for those takedowns, and she's gonna want to get on top of you and ground and pound you and look for submissions. So fight's probably gonna hit the ground, and unless Hardy can pull off some submission, I think Miller gets this one done pretty easily, probably inside the distance. Yeah, that's about all I got on that one. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree. And with Juliana Miller, it's like when you watch her fight, you can tell that she's got skill and she's going to be a good fighter, but she's got so little experience in octagon time that she doesn't really have all of her skills sharpened up yet. I think her ceiling is higher. You know, she's 3-1, riding a good win streak, coming off of the Ultimate Fighter, beat Brogan Walker. So she's going to be riding the momentum. She's going to be high on herself. She's going to be confident. And like I said, man, she's so new at this level, in the professional level, that she's got time to sharpen these skills as she goes. Every time she fights is going to be a new learning experience, and she's going to find something she needs to work on after every fight. And I think against Brogan Walker, she probably, found what she needed to do better and what she does good, and continue to sharpen the skills. Against Veronica Hardy, 6-4-1, she's not. I don't know. She just doesn't really do anything special. She got the finish against Polyana, but like you said, man, the fight against B Malecki, kind of boring, kind of a snoozer. And she's also been finished her fair, I don't want to say fair share, but she's only got 3 losses. She's been finished 2 out of her 3 losses. So, I mean, I don't know. I just don't. Veronica Hardy doesn't do it for me. I think in this fight, Juliana Miller with the higher ceiling, the confidence, more to lose, really. I mean, she keeps winning. She's going to make a name for herself. Everything points to Juliana Miller here. But again, this level of women's MMA, you never know. And it's just not something that super high confidence to bet on. So Juliana Miller, the pick, obviously. Probably not going to have much on this one.
Yeah, it's just that 3 years off. Like, maybe she just took those 3 years off to get a lot better, because she was 1-4 in the UFC and she realized she needed to get a lot better. But
yeah,
it's also like, why do you need to do this? I mean, she's married to Dan Hardy, UFC, former UFC fighter, and she's like a commentator for Aries FC.
Yep.
So it's like, I don't know, what's the point here? I mean, unless you just really want to go out there and prove that you're something special with the mixed martial arts. She's only 27, so I mean, she could still be improving a lot.
Yeah.
So that makes it a little bit of a tough one to get on Miller, but I think she does win. I think she finishes her probably. She's really aggressive chick. She wants to get it done inside the distance. But that's it for this one. Get on the premium plays, because, like I said, we've been hitting those NHA plays. 11x, man. If that's the only thing you play, you'll be looking pretty dang good.
Oh yeah.
And for $19.99 a month, we had these the whole month of March. There's been a fight night, or at least a fight night every Saturday. So you're getting fights every Saturday, less than $1 a day. Get on that. If not, you can get the plays. They'll be up there Friday night and Sunday morning for purchase. A one-time purchase there for $9.99. Other than that, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for all the support. And you can see all the short form content at the Double Egg on Instagram and TikTok. Make sure to follow there for all the clips. And if you're watching here on YouTube, leave a sub. I'm trying to get that sub count out and keep growing this thing. So at HeyJaiPicks and all the social medias for me, where can they find you?
TikTok at The Parlay, Instagram The Parlay_media, and Twitter and YouTube The Parlay MMA.
All right. Bit of a long one, but if you watched till the end, thank you for your view, and I appreciate you. Till then, at the Double Egg, we'll be recapping some UFC 286 in the next video. Peace.